I was in a lot of quarterback battles in college. In fact, literally every single dude that I lost a quarterback battle to ended up being an NFL starter. My true freshman, redshirt freshman, and redshirt sophomore years, I backed up Cody Kessler at USC. Those first 2 years, I lost the battle to him. And then fast forward to 2016, he's a third-round draft pick by the Cleveland Browns. That week 2 of that year ends up being their starter. My 4th year in college, my redshirt junior year, I ended up starting 3 games before getting benched to Sam Darnold. Darnold just led the Vikings to their best regular season win total since 1998, but hey, I just downed 1,400 ounces of caffeine just for a YouTube video, so who's stacking up more dubs the past 12 months? Then in 2017, I transferred to Pitt. I started, I think it was 4 games before getting benched for Ben DiNucci. Ben was a 7th round draft pick and ended up starting games for the Cowboys. I started the very next week that season, ended up getting ACC Player of the Week, and then the week after, I got hurt. In the final week of that season, the guy that was technically starting ahead of me was Kenny Pickett. I also had 5 head coaches in college, and I say all that to say I know quarterback competitions and the optics around them very well. And by the time I'm publishing this video, most of the quarterback battles will be announced. Some will bleed into the season, but the reality is the decisions to these QB competitions will ultimately decide the fate of all these teams. And with this much at stake, why aren't the conversations around quarterback battles better? Ever since I started getting on the media side of football, I've noticed a huge gap in how we talk about quarterback battles behind the desk and how they actually play out in reality. You can take the same dude, put him behind a desk, suit and tie, former coach in the analyst role, and he'll talk about a quarterback battle as if, oh, you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. If it's equal, you gotta go with the young guy. But time and time again, when we see it actually play out in real life, see a lot of coaches elect to go 2 quarterback systems. You oftentimes see the game manager quarterback beat out the guy with high upside. The big difference between what folks at the desk say and what folks within the facility know actually matters. And I've talked about this subject on a few podcasts, but I've held off on making a full-length YouTube video about it because the reality is I lost almost all my quarterback competitions, so I don't want this video to come across as if I'm like spiteful or jaded. I think I can avoid that and actually put together a video for you guys that I've wanted to see every summer. Here's what the video consists of. The ways competing for quarterback 1 is just like applying for any other job. The ways it's unlike applying for any other job. I've told you guys this before. I had 5 head coaches in college, so we'll dive into the best approaches that I've seen to the situation from coaches and quarterbacks and the worst approaches I've seen. How quarterback battles have changed in the 10 years since I was in one, and applying this new understanding to the 5 quarterback battles in college football in 2025 that I find most interesting. First, let's start off with the ways that's exactly like job applications in the real world. First, being a vibes guy or a personality hire, it matters. EQ holds weight. Like if you're the shy, reserved guy, coaches are gonna look at that as a disadvantage, all else being equal. The opposite's also true. If you're a vibes guy, everyone gets along with you, guys look to you, that's gonna be viewed as an advantage. When I was battling it out with Sam Darnold, I had a big advantage over him in that I was one of the vocal leaders on the team. And that's not just a, hey, I'm rah-rah in workouts and all that. No, coaches know that the best teams are player-led. Coaches also know that most guys don't like being vocal leaders, or most guys can't be vocal leaders because they haven't earned that right. I was on campus for 4 years. I had earned my stripes. I had that credibility in that locker room. So from a relationship building standpoint and implementing your culture, that matters. This is one of the biggest factors the fan on their couch underestimates. In fact, I just watched it in the Netflix series with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. Like it never sells of like, oh, Graham Mertz, he's a better leader than DJ Lagway. But then time and time again across different staffs, you frequently see the 4th or 5th year guy maybe get that start, even if he's a game manager, over the hotshot young guy. Championship teams are player led. Now let me be clear, if I was significantly worse at running the offense than Sam was, it wouldn't have mattered. But when it's close enough, you better believe that's part of the edge that allowed me to have the week 1 start. And I know there's a USC fan watching this being like, oh, well, that was a dumb decision. We should have started Sam. All right, touche. I get that. I'll wear that on the chin, but I promise you this year, you'll see it again. A veteran quarterback who's a game manager type guy beat out the hotshot young guy. And it's because of this reason. Second way a QB battle is like any other job application. 1 position available means only 1 position available. With a lot of positions on a football team, that's just not the case. You might have a left tackle battle where the loser of of the left tackle battle might just turn to left guard. Or even if they lose that left tackle battle, you can still rotate 6 or 7 guys on the offensive line. For a quarterback, or someone trying to get that job, if you don't get the job, that means you're sitting on the sideline. There's rarely a next time. Third, talent gives you privilege. Talent lets you get away with a lot. The people that are making the decisions for who gets this job can forgive a lot if it's someone that has high upside. But there's always a limit, and you hear about quarterbacks needing to recalibrate when they do hit that limit. Tate Martell and Spencer Rattler are some recent examples. The final way a quarterback battles, just like any other job application process everywhere else, you can do a project perfectly and still lose the job. Picture this: quarterback A and quarterback B are competing. Quarterback A gets a play call in practice and goes through the progressions perfectly. The deep post isn't there, neither is the dig, so he checks the ball down to the back and does his job. Later, quarterback B gets the same play call, but this time the defense is in a different coverage. He hits the deep post and the sideline goes wild. The vibes are high. It's easy for even some coaches, but definitely players, to be like, oh, why can't quarterback A make that throw? They both did their job perfectly, but somebody gets the edge. That can be the look the defense gave you, play call, injuries, personnel decisions, like, hey, did quarterback B get receiver 1 running the post and quarterback A got receiver 6 running that post? Or just a dozen other variables that come into play. Just like when another candidate has maybe a relationship that you don't have, they get assigned a flashier sample project than you did, or they simply just caught the main interviewer in a better mood that day. But as much as I wish more people could relate to losing out on a starting quarterback battle at a Division I school, there are ways it's unlike any other gig. The first is there isn't media coverage and people writing stories about, hey, how's Bob's interview process going? There was no reporter asking me about how I felt about moving to the second round of commercial real estate interviews. Compared to my first quarterback battle, my true freshman year, I literally remember going off the field every single day after practice, getting in the ice bath, and scrolling the timelines of beat writers to see what they were saying about me. If I was giving advice to a young quarterback, I would say do whatever you can to not do that. Definitely easier said than done, but there's no denying that the media coverage certainly makes this a bigger deal. There are very few jobs in our society where the interview process is covered like that. The second way a quarterback interview is unique, the consequences. Not getting a job means you have 2 choices: move, oftentimes across the country, or be okay with likely never getting another shot. As fans and media members, I'm guilty of this myself, and honestly it gets worse the older you get because there's more and more football seasons where, hey, a starter gets announced, then you feel a little bit of sympathy for the other guy, and then we just move on. Like, the reality is, like, that kid's not gonna have a big impact on the team, and you're focused on the starter. The dude's just another guy on the team. But for that kid, it's his life. It's not just that 1 or 2 years he's been wearing the jersey, maybe 3 or 4 years. It's his entire life. He's been working for this moment. It means a deep, painful self-reflection of whether or not he can play this sport, this position, or this coach on this team. And before all of that, they have to decide if they want to. And I totally get it. Don't get me wrong. In today's game, these kids are very well taken care of. And there's a lot worse things going on in the world. But my point is, very few job application processes, if you don't get that job, result in you either moving or giving up entirely on working in that industry. So we've talked about how it is in the abstract, but let's get into actual examples of how QBs handle battles. First off, not letting any sort of, uneasy vibes negatively affect the locker room is key. When I look back on all my quarterback competitions, they were all good, but the one that was honestly probably the best vibes was me versus Darnold. And I think it's because the roles were more clearly defined, even though we were battling. I was the upperclassman, I was more the vocal leader. Darnold was the young, raw talent guy. Compared to other battles like, and I get it, when I was battling Ben DiNucci at Pitt, he was the homegrown guy, and I was the dude transferred in to try to take his job. We were cool, but it wasn't like we were best buds. Similar with me and Kessler. Again, we were cool, genuinely, but he was the upperclassman, wasn't necessarily the biggest recruited guy. I was the young, out-of-state, national prospect guy, 5-star dude. It was much more competitive in those early days. Once Kessler became the starter, okay, that's a little bit different. But can't let any sort of just awkward vibes impact the locker room. The best approach for coaches I've seen with quarterback battles: be transparent. Don't play telephone. A great example of this that I've seen, recently came across it again, the algorithm fed me it. It's Bill O'Brien with the Texans, 2015. You can go watch it on YouTube after you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Help your boy out with the algorithm. But Bill O'Brien, he's letting Brian Hoyer and Ryan Mallett know who the starting quarterback's going to be that year. He's got those two quarterbacks, the quarterback coach, and another assistant coach in the room. He tells everyone in the room at the same time Brian Hoyer is starting, why, and how close Ryan Mallett was to earning the job. Everyone's on the same page. There's no kind of wishy-washy, one guy gets one message, one guy gets another message. Everyone's moving forward with the same understanding. Clay Helton did the exact same thing in 2016. He had Darnold and I in our post-spring meeting come into his office at the same time and delivered the same message to both of us at the exact same time. There was no, hey, Darnold got one message, and I'm thinking, hey, what's he telling Darnold? And I got a different message, and Darnold's thinking, hey, what did Helton tell Browne? He looked at both of us and said, I got 2 NFL starting quarterbacks on our roster. Joke's on me, because that didn't happen for me. It's obviously happening for Darnold. But he said, I got a great problem. I got 2 quarterbacks I like. Only one dude can play. I got a tough decision to make. We're going to let the spring ball battle head into fall camp. Compared to I had a different coach that publicly said it was a quarterback battle, but then I got word that he was watching film with one of the other quarterbacks on their own, like separate hours. And I was like, I'm not getting one-on-one film watching time with the head coach. Is this really a quarterback battle? To me, your message can lose credibility if that's the case. I'll start with a personal approach that I wish I could have changed. I remember my first quarterback competition, my true freshman year, I would get off the field in spring ball, go in the ice bath, and immediately open up Twitter and scroll to see what the beat writers had written about the quarterback competition that day. As a young true freshman making mistakes, oftentimes the reviews were not positive. And for a young 5-star guy, that was the first time that I had gotten real criticism about my play. And I used to think that I was better than that and it wasn't impacting him, but it definitely was eating at me. I wanted so bad to play well, so then you got good articles written about you, so then your friends and family back home, when they're looking for updates, see, hey, how's Max doing? That's the good stuff. So much easier said than done. Luckily, I grew out of that as I got older and more competitions under my belt. But that's tough, and it's probably worse now because of the shareability of social media now. Unlike the ones I've talked about thus far, I got perspective on this bad approach once I got into broadcasting. The approach is coaches leaning on stats from practice to try to be more objective in these competitions. I don't think that bears good results. It just gives coaches an out when mom calls and says, why is Joey not starting? Because stats disregard those variables I mentioned earlier that are outside the quarterback's control. In a game, you can be sure you're getting the other team's best. In practice, coaches and players are trying different things, schemes, lineups. I don't like using completion percentage as just a catch-all term for why, hey, one dude's running with the ones. A dude that's got 72% completion percentage, but he's missed 2 big touchdown shots down the field is not as good as a dude who's had 62% completion percentage, but he's pushing the ball downfield. Second, QB is a subjective position. How a guy makes his team feel is not the most quantifiable metric, but just because it's tough to measure doesn't mean it should be ignored. Another approach of coaches that I am not a fan of. Don't say there's a quarterback competition if there's not a competition. Pete Carroll championed the world competition, and then every other coach for the past 15 years has hid behind that word. I get that it's a tactic to inspire a guy to develop. I just think that if you're 80% sure on a starter, go all in with him. And I get it, you have to say there's a competition, so then the number 2 guy doesn't transfer, and number 3 thinks that he has some backdoor shot when he calls his mom and dad back home that he might play. But it's just, let's call a spade a spade. It's disingenuous when a lot of those coaches get on the table and say, we're giving every dude a chance to compete. Actually, that's not disingenuous. What's disingenuous is when we say, yep, it's a quarterback competition. And now that I say that, coaches have altered their vocab. They now say, we're giving every guy a chance to compete, and not it's a quarterback competition. Subtle difference, but big difference. Coaches be hiding behind the word competition when I guarantee 80% of them, 85%, they know who their starter is going to be, probably before fall camp starts. Moving on to the unk portion of this video, back in my day, nah. But for real, the portal's changed everything. If you call it a competition and it's not one, there's consequences. Guys are not sticking around if they don't think they can win the job in 2 years. My story of spending 3 years behind a dude as a 5-star prospect is rare, almost unheard of nowadays. But on the flip side, coaches have zero incentive to name a starter after spring ball. Remember those days? It was normal to have a starting quarterback named after after spring ball. So then the team knew their leader heading into summer camp and fall ball, the whole deal. But nowadays, if coaches do name a starter, the other dude's transferring in that May window. Another huge way things are different that I don't see talked about as much, scheme. 15 years ago, pro-style concepts were super complex, and that favored old guys. It was incredibly difficult 15 years ago for a true freshman to come in, learn the scheme, get up to speed, and beat out the old guy in a lot of these schemes where literally just getting in and out of the huddle was one of the hardest things for a young quarterback. The terminology's been dumbed down, which helps younger quarterbacks get on the field faster. All right, so I hope that gave you guys a better idea of what a quarterback battle is actually like, how it impacts the team, and my perspective on them. And with that, let's get into the 5 QB battles I'm most excited to see how they play out this fall camp. First, Alabama. They've got a defense with first-round talent at all 3 levels. They have the second best wide receiver in the country, and Ryan Grubb is back with his old boy, Kalen DeBoer, after a year as the Seahawks OC. The only missing piece in Tuscaloosa is a quarterback. Dude, if Jalen Milroe came back to the Tide, they'd be everyone's offseason pick. But Milroe moved on to the Seahawks, funny enough. And so they've got Ty Simpson, the redshirt junior. He's got 50 attempts under his belt, but no touchdowns and no interceptions. Was the number 3 quarterback in the class of 2022. Austin Mack. I know a lot of Husky fans were really excited about him before he transferred to Alabama. Redshirt sophomore, 6'6", 235. Very limited career stats, not as high of a recruit as Ty Simpson. And then you got Keelan Russell, the number 2 overall quarterback prospect in the class of 2025, true freshman. We've talked about the difficulties of a true freshman coming in and playing, but it has happened. In fact, the last Alabama true freshman that had a coming out party early on in the season was against me, Jalen Hurts. Bottom line though, I like Austin Mack just from like what you read, but I think Ty Simpson wins the job. Moving on, who will lead the Calgorithm in 2025? This might be a super niche take, but the stakes of this decision are high in 2025. Head coach Justin Wilcox can't afford a down year. Devin Browne waited to just turn out Ohio State, and reading between the lines, they told him he wouldn't get a shot at Ohio State. Jerron, I'm still working on your last name, the true freshman at Cal, was committed to Cal, then signed with Oregon, was there for the Rose Bowl, and said, nah, I'm gonna go back to Cal. Obviously, he went back to Berkeley thinking that he could play right away. Bottom line, I think Wilcox needs to win right now. I think it's going to be Devin Browne. And who knows, maybe that dude can play. I mean, Ohio State's had a loaded QB room. Browne was a big recruit. But if Browne does start and Cal starts losing games, you run the risk of losing the highest rated QB recruit that Wilcox has ever gotten his Cal tenure. Sticking out west, or kind of out west, OG Pac-12 school. Who's going to be Coach Prime signal caller in 2025? This is a low-key big season for Colorado. If they can compete in the Big 12, it's a sign that the program was not just about 2 guys, both of which have their numbers retired. One of which is ridiculous that his number was retired. So whoever's under center is going to have massive pressure to make sure that the Buffs don't have a down year. Caden Salter's the vet. I was kind of surprised Colorado got him, just given, how big of a recruit Julian Lewis was. He's got tons of experience, 702 career attempts, almost 6,000 yards, 56 TDs, 7 interceptions, with 2,000 yards rushing to go along with that. Julian Lewis, big recruit, number 6 quarterback in the country this past year, 6'1", 190, true freshman. Deion took them both to media days. He took a true freshman to media days. It's one thing to take both, that's weird. It's another thing to take a true freshman. That's weird, but that's also a sign. I think Julian Lewis ultimately starts. Now let's talk about the $10 million true freshman. Michigan leveraged its alumni base to flip Bryce Underwood's commitment from LSU to the Wolverines. They kept the number 1 recruit in the country in state, and that pressure is going to be insane. But there are, and I feel like Michigan fans might forget this, there's other dudes in the room. Davis Warren's still in that room, and Michigan fans would probably hate to hear this, but he started games. He could start again, but I don't think it'll happen. They never went to Jaden Davis when things got bleak last year, so I doubt it happens this year. He's out. But Mikey Keene, the Fresno State transfer, he's not transferring to Ann Arbor just to, hey, twiddle your thumbs and have a good time. I think he pushes Bryce Underwood for that starting role. I will say though, with schools like Michigan or USC, you never know if a kid gets at a certain point where he's like, you know what, kind of want that Michigan Business School grad degree. Kind of want that USC MBA. We never talk about that, but it's very much a factor. Bottom line, after the success of DJ Lagway and Dylan Raiola last year, and just, again, all the pressure around Bryce Underwood, I think the dude starts. Kind of respect that he's number 19, too. That's the worst quarterback number, and that dude's just going to rock it. Now to the other sideline in the game this year, Ohio State. Whoever wins this competition gets to throw to the most talented receiver group in the country. It's between 5-star transfer from Alabama, Julian Sand, or the pride of South Dakota, Lincoln Keenholz. Vegas thinks it's Sam, but Quinones can steal this one. He is more athletic and physically imposing. What sticks out to me is, at least from everything you read, two totally different skill sets, which maybe of all these, I could see a 2-quarterback system here, possibly week 1. At the end of the day, it's got to be saying no, because worst case scenario, I think he becomes just a solid game manager and you just play point guard and get your playmakers the ball. And then as the season progresses, maybe he grows into being a more dynamic quarterback as they make their title run. But man, I don't miss being in quarterback competitions, but they are fun to cover on the other side of the desk. But hey, if you like this video, I appreciate you hanging around. Like it down below, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna be cranking up the football vids in a big way come in season. So if you've been hanging in the off season, I appreciate you, and don't miss out on the videos that are to come. See you next time.